Hey there, this is Sebastian from 8base. Today, we're going to be looking at how you can seed your database or a new workspace environment with dummy data using a serverless function, specifically task functions. Now, I'm going to be showing this in the context of CI/CD for seeding a new workspace environment. However, this could work for whether it's you only have one environment in your workspace or multiple. So it really applies in multiple ways. And really, at the end of the day, what it is, it's more of a creative use of the task function. So let's get started by just first looking a little bit at the workspace that we have. So here I have my workspace, SuperTasks backend. And inside of here, I have multiple workspace environments: master, staging, development, and then this feature branch called multi-tenant. Now, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be going to my command line to create a new environment, which I will want to develop in. And I can do that by shooting over to my VS Code. I'm in my SuperTasks backend right here, and I'm going to run 8base configure just to make sure that I'm connected to the right workspace, as I do jump around sometimes. SuperTasks backend, perfect. And then I'm going to run 8base environment list. Cool. And now I'm just going to set dev as my current environment. Awesome. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create my new environment. So 8base environment branch. And I'm going to run the help command just so we can look at some of the options really quickly. So if we wanted to, any of the data that's currently in our dev environment, when branching this environment, we could copy over. Now, there's reasons why you might not want to do that. Especially if you're going from like a production environment to a feature branch, maybe you don't want to bring your users' production data down. And so that's where this way of seeding your database would become more useful. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to say branch. I'm going to say that the name of the new environment is test or new feature. And the mode is going to be system. And by saying system, that means that we're not copying over any data. So I'm going to run that, and I will check back in a minute once this new environment has created. Okay, so now with that new environment created, what we're going to go ahead and do is create a new function, which is going to be a task function. So 8base, G for generate, task, and we're going to call this seed dummy data. And the syntax is going to be JavaScript. Now, just because you author a function doesn't mean you have to deploy a function, right? You can create as many functions as you want, which you only ever use for managing your workspace locally or interacting with your API. It's a great way of essentially generating a function quickly and then having an environment in which you can quickly execute the scripts you write, have a pre-authenticated API, really just like a nice working environment. So that's what we're going to leverage here to be able to essentially write a script that interacts with our API to generate some dummy data. Now we have that task right here. And once again, if I was deploying, I didn't want it out, I could just comment it out and I'd be good. And so now I'm going to go into the source and I'm going to look at my function here. So I'm just going to say that once it's done, it just task completed, period, and doesn't need to be a string literal. Can just be a normal string. Cool. Now, a couple things that we want to do. So the first thing is that I have some dummy data, which I'm going to pull from off screen. And this is going to be the dummy data essentially that we send to our API. Right now, if we wanted to, we could pull in some type of cool faker module that fake generates a bunch of data. We could write something that numerically calculates it. However you want to come up with your dummy data, you can 100% do that. However, instead of creating a separate file that we have to import that file and read the data, we can just actually use a mock. So instead of it being called the request mock, I'm going to call it the seed.json. Go in there, delete the headers and the body. That's not relevant. We have a data object. We can call it data. And I'm going to drop in this JSON. So essentially it's 4 lists, each one with 5 tasks and just some text on each one. We'll save that. Cool. So now inside this function, if I wanted to, or which I do, I'm going to console.logout the event.data, and that should be the data that we just created. And I'm just going to update this to say seed so that when I copy it, it works. So 8-base invoke local, the name of the function, seed dummy data, and then the mock is seed. I'm going to run that, and boom, that's exactly now what's console logging out. So now we know we have our data inside our function. And what I said earlier about the pre-authenticate API module, that's the context argument. So here, context API GraphQL request, I'm all set up to interact with my API. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a for loop. I'm going to do for each object inside, so for each list, it's going to be the constant inside of our event.data. Once again, I always just like logging things out. Probably pretty junior of me, but it is what it is. And making sure that, boom, okay, so we are getting, there we go, we're getting integers right now. So I think that if we change that to the of, we will be good. Cool. So here we're getting each list with the dummy data and the tasks and all that stuff. Awesome. So now we know that, okay, well, we are getting this argument here. So name, description, dummy tasks, and this is what we're getting, and this is the dummy data that we want to create for our list. So let's jump back now to our console. And here I already have the mutation written that we're going to want to use. So essentially we're writing a mutation where we pass a name, a description, and the dummy tasks. And then we're going to create a list using that. So we're going to use the list create operation, and as the data, pass in the name, the description, and then to the task relationship, create new tasks through that relationship, which is the dummy tasks array, and we just get an ID back. We don't really care about the response in this case. So I copied that, and we can see we have no data in our database. Cool. So let me go back to VS Code. Awesome. And here, do a new constant called mutation, which is going to equal that mutation that we created. Awesome. So now inside here, pretty simple. Await context API GraphQL request, and into that pass in the mutation as well as the list. And we're just going to iterate over those. Very straightforward. So let's go ahead and run that. Done. And now if we go back to our console and reload the page, we can see that we interacted with our API and we were able to generate the dummy data in this new environment, as well as all the different tasks that we wanted in there as well. So I know this was a short video. However, I always like to, when investigating new tools, see the ways that the people that are the power users of those tools use them in creative or different ways. Essentially, if you were to look at our documentation, you'd see tasks as these things which you run on a schedule or you invoke from another function. However, they are actually an amazing utility to use when wanting to interface with your API in essentially a pre-authenticated environment, and even use them as more of like on an ad hoc basis. Maybe you have some way of cleaning data that you want to use and you have that function stored locally to whenever you want to run it. So I hope this gave you some cool new ideas on ways that you can have more efficient 8-base projects or develop in a more maintainable and systematic way. If you like these videos and you want to be subscribed to get updates when new ones come out, definitely subscribe to the channel. Definitely check out some of the other videos that we've been producing. They'll give you some other great tips on how to develop with 8-base, and I look forward to seeing you in future videos.